At the start, I knew that Catherine, who was playing Rosalind, would have to miss one of the outside performances. That left us with the challenge of finding an actor who could play that role for one performance.
If possible, could you give me a brief synopsis of As You Like It?
Oh, now this is a while ago. As You Like It is a Shakespeare play about young lovers, Orlando and Rosalind, who have to flee to the forest to escape the machinations of an evil duke. In the forest, they meet all kinds of characters. They are followed there by various people that they knew from the court. It is effectively a Shakespearean sketch show. It's a whole bunch of different relationships, vignettes, as the various lovers come to terms with the difficulties that are placed in their way and ultimately arrive at a happy romantic ending. It is, I ought to emphasise, a comedy. So yeah, that's As You Like It.
What made you choose As You Like It?
It's an interesting one. That I was artistic director from 2010 to 2013, and when I became artistic director, we didn't have an outside annual show, but I was aware of this space called the Putney Old Burial Ground, which sits really just behind the theatre. Small public park, used to be a cemetery full of picturesque gravestones and gorgeous old protected trees. And I had heard that Group 64, the youth group, back in the mists of time, had done some productions out there. I programmed 3 productions. The first one was A Midsummer Night's Dream, which was directed by Tom Sainsbury, which was an exceptionally well-received production. It was part of the first RSC Open Stages season. So this was 2017, and this was the first of our new round of summer Shakespeare's. The following year, I directed another one, The Tempest. As You Like It struck us as one of the ones that's a fairly obvious play to do for an outdoor setting, because it is set at least half, well, in fact 2/3 more or less of it is set in a forest under spreading trees, which worked well for the old burial ground. Ultimately, we approached it with this concept called Glastonbury. We were partly influenced by the time of year, because every time we do our summer outdoor show, it's around about the same time as Glastonbury. It was moving out of the repressive city into the freedom of the countryside, a place where you can really get to know yourself, find your true self, and therefore fall in love and have a more joyful and peaceful and less repressed existence.
Am I correct in saying that it was an anniversary of kind of the Summer of Love, as it were?
1967 was the Summer of Love, so that was 50 years before. It was also the first Monterey Music Festival, which is the first big modern music festival. We used a little bit of the hippie counterculture to create part of the design concept for it. So when you went into the Forest of Arden, you and hooked up with Duke Senior. He's abdicated his role as Duke and gone to the forest where he lives with his companions in a simple way, and we turned that into Duke Senior effectively being a kind of guru with his little commune of people.
Using Glastonbury, is that why music then became such quite an important part of your production?
Yes, absolutely. It was the first of our outdoor shows to have 4 outdoor performances and 5 indoor performances. The way they work is that they go indoor first and then outdoor for weekend matinees. So actually there was much more of a sort of balance between the 2 elements. The outdoor was basically as important as the indoor in terms of the number of performances. So this production was more than perhaps the productions we'd done in the past, designed to work outdoors, which meant that music in particular had to be live. And it did make sense to use music given the Summer of Love, Glastonbury kind of concept. The music was done by Perry Kitchen, who came in and initially agreed to compose. And then the more we got into it, the more Perry agreed to do, until I eventually ended up integrating him into the cast. And in fact, his wife Sarah then later came and joined the cast to sing one of the songs. Perry created a sort of musical scape that was very much based on late 1960s, early 1970s. The hippie sound used were integrated into his guitar work for it. And that helped to reinforce that sense that we were all lying on the ground at Woodstock listening to Ravi Shankar.
So it's interesting you say that this possibly was the first time where the outdoor show was almost thought of first and was really, really important, integral. Did you then have to work backwards and then decide how to do the indoor show as not as an afterthought, but almost as a secondary part of the process?
One of the key things we did was outdoors, we effectively play as a traverse. So the audience sits on two grassy banks on either side of a path that runs through the middle. And we only had a week between doing our show in the theatre and doing our first show outside. So limited time for remodelling the show. So I decided that the best way to approach it when I talked with my designer, Rich Evans, was that we would create a traverse within the theatre. So we built a second bank of audience on the stage, equal and opposite to the main bank of audience. That meant that when we took it out to the burial ground, we were effectively working on exactly the same staging. And therefore, there was no real need to change entrances and exits and the way in which the actors moved on stage. So yes, the way that the outside show was going to be performed influenced the way we staged the inside show. That also came right down to the trees, because the design for the set then incorporated what were non-realistic trees. Rich Evans came up with a set where the trees feel like the beams of a great hall during the inside part of the play, which is roughly the first third of the play. Then when you go into the Forest of Arden, those same beam structures become trees. He used LED lighting, both within the tree structures themselves to light them up from within, and also with lighting strung between the trees, on which we could do all kinds of things. We started out with these banners and curtains, which were going to be part of the court scenes, and were then going to drop when we moved into the forest. But in the end, for various technical reasons, that was one of the things that got pruned back as unnecessary to the production. And ultimately, a lot of that change of scene was done with light and the way in which we used the space. In the play, there's a wrestling match. The stage has a certain amount of flex in it. You can throw somebody down the stage and it makes a big sound, but they're not going to break their back. You can't do that on a tarmacked path. So straight away, we had a bit of a question over how we were going to do the wrestling match. We would have the wrestling match take place in a slightly different part of the park, and that the audience would have to be encouraged to get up and form a ring around the wrestlers to watch the wrestling match. Everybody seemed to really enjoy that. The actors encouraged them to get up, come and watch the wrestling match. It's Charles versus Orlando. It's going to be exciting, and they got them up to form this ring around the two characters having the wrestling match outside, and it was, if anything, even more fun as a result.
How do you go about casting, not just this play, but I guess Shakespeare? Not only your cast understanding the characters, but they're understanding the language.
Went into this one assuming that I would cross-cast a fair bit, and Shakespeare plays on the whole aren't written with a lot of female roles. This one in particular actually is an interesting one because it has the biggest female Shakespeare role, Rosalind, the heroine. However, it isn't a very female-heavy cast. And in fact, I did end up cross-casting a few roles. Duke became a duchess. Adam, the elderly retainer, became Orlando's former nurse, Adams. There are lots of really good, fun, meaty roles, and it's mostly an ensemble piece, which makes it quite a good thing to cast in amateur theatre, because you're not casting on the basis that you've got a star to play Hamlet or a star to play Lear. It is an almost universally happy, funny, and joyful play, and that seemed to communicate itself to the cast. At the end of most Shakespeare comedies, you'll do a jig, a dance, a thing that sort of puts a full stop to the play. We'd worked out that everybody was going to get a happy ending for this one, including the evil Duchess, who we had dressed to look like Theresa May. So she comes back at the end of the play in her hippie outfit, having seen the light. And often you're doing the jig at the end of a play, and everybody's trying to look like they're having a wave at the time, but they're actually worried about where the feet are going, and whether they can remember the dance steps, and what's going to happen next, and whether they're in time, and all the rest of it. But this one, we had one session, and just everybody seemed to be having a fantastic time doing it, and the joy was genuine. And that, I think, was when I thought we're going to have a really good production here, not just a good one, but something that is going to be uplifting. I really must mention that I had an assistant director, Kirsty Harrison, working on it, who was fantastic throughout and really supportive and full of ideas. At the start, I knew that Catherine, who was playing Rosalind, would have to miss one of the outside performances. That left us with the challenge of finding an actor who could play that role for one performance. Kirsty volunteered right from the off, and through the rehearsal process, she was learning all of Rosalind's lines, the largest female role in Shakespeare, and with, I think, one rehearsal, went on and did a full-scale performance in the open air and did an absolutely marvellous job of it. She always said playing Rosalind was on her bucket list, so she got to do it. But it did take an enormous amount of hard work and a great deal of courage to take that on as a one-off.
How do you feel about How'd You Like It? When you think back to it, how do you feel about it?
It was undoubtedly one of the happiest experiences I've had in a theatre. From start to finish, I felt very proud of it and very confident that when I asked people to come and see it, that they were going to have a good time.
But I remember seeing the inside one and seeing the Theresa May necklace and thinking, because it's subtle. It's not even like she's pretending to be here. It's just having that nod to her. It's like automatically I know what her character is meant to be like.
That necklace belongs to my partner. She got Marks and Spencer's. Can I borrow your necklace because it's the same one that Theresa May wears? And she said, no, it's not. There's no way that Theresa May gets her necklace from Marks and Spencer's. It's the exact same necklace that Theresa May wears. I don't think Nicola's worn it that much since, I'm afraid.
Don't blame her.